Welcome. My name is Jayashri Srikantiah. I'm the Associate Dean for Clinical Education here at the law school. I also direct the Immigrants' Rights Clinic. And we are so excited to tell you more about the clinics that are being offered next year and to convey the information we have about how you can register. I just want to acknowledge that for sure, there is a lot of uncertainty right now because of the COVID pandemic. And one of the things we want to assure you is that we plan to have a robust clinical offering next year, no matter what. So we'll tell you more about that. We know there's a lot to work through, and this is the first of many opportunities you're going to have to learn about the clinics at the law school. So today, just to give you a little bit of an overview, we're going to start with the basics, tell you a little bit about each clinic, tell you how to register, and give you a little bit of time to ask questions. So let me start with some housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded. So if you, excuse me, oh yeah, thank you. This meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the Mills Legal Clinic website. So I'm gonna ask you, if you have friends who couldn't join the meeting, you can direct them to the website. Please stay muted while you're on this Zoom call. We encourage you to use the speaker view and not the gallery view. And the reason why is that we will have each of the clinic directors introduce themselves, and this will give you a chance to see their faces when they come up. We encourage you to select the side-by-side option to see both the speakers as they come up and the slides. And we want to just inform you that the chat function on the Zoom call is disabled for person-to-person chat, except for you to chat the hosts. So if you have a question that comes up for you as we're talking, feel free to send a chat message to one of the hosts, and we will try to get to it either during the presentation or afterwards. So those are some housekeeping rules. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move ahead and talk a little bit about the basics. All right, so clinics at Stanford. So many of you might have come to Stanford because of our amazing clinics. And I don't think I'm bragging or talking out of school when I say that I really do think we have the best clinics in the country, and we are so excited to have you join us. We think that the clinics provide a unique opportunity to grow from the role of law student to legal advocate, to lawyer. And it happens in a really supported, thoughtful, reflective, immersive context. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about that. Just off the top, as I mentioned, some of you might wonder whether the clinics are going to be offered given the COVID crisis. And I want to reassure you that we will be offering clinics, that each clinic is 12 units, and that you will have the opportunity to take the clinics for those full 12 credits, and that we will be offering them next year. So coming to the credits, all students take clinics for 12 units. That means that when you take the clinic, you'll be enrolled in full-time for 12 credits. That means that you are in the clinics full-time, and that's the only class you will take when you're in a clinic. One of the things that this gives us the opportunity to do is operate as one firm. And what that means is that when you're in the clinic, let's say you're in the community law clinic, you can have conversations with students in other clinics and learn from their experience and share what you're doing. And a lot of the learning in clinic happens from this student to student interaction, which is one of the really special things about the Mills Legal Clinic and our ability to offer you that full-time as the only class that you're taking. So this is a picture of our Newcomb office. In the normal course of events, you would have lots of opportunities to come and visit us in this office during this time when you're thinking about clinics. Unfortunately, we're doing this via Zoom, but normally we have this beautiful space on the ground floor of the Newcomb building, and you'll see students sitting in the cubicles, and that's where they have the opportunities to talk to each other. We also have a wonderful office for the Community Law Clinic in East Palo Alto. This is an off-site clinic, our only off-site clinic. And students who take the community law clinic travel out to East Palo Alto, it's not very far, to take the community law clinic as a full-time experience that quarter. One of the most important things I can tell you about the clinic is that by taking a clinic at Stanford, you satisfy completely your experiential learning graduation requirement. And in fact, it's how most students satisfy this requirement. So this summer, after you go through the registration process, you'll be required to submit a form indicating your plans for how you satisfy experiential learning. This happens after clinic registration, so you will know that you have gotten into a clinic when you have to fill out that form. And as I said, when you fill out that form and when you take the clinic, you satisfy the requirement completely. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ron Tyler, who directs the Criminal Defense Clinic, to tell you a little bit more about clinical education. Ron is then going to turn it over to another colleague, Phil Malone, who will tell you about each clinic very briefly. And then Juliet Brody, who directs the Community Law Clinic, will tell you about how to apply for clinics. And then you'll see me again at the end for your questions. So I'm going to turn it over now to Ron.
Okay. Thank you. Well, so here I am, not really in the Caribbean, even though I might want to be. And I want to begin with this question of why clinic? Since, as Professor Srikantiah just mentioned, it's possible to satisfy the experiential learning requirement in two different ways. Why do we think that you're so well served by choosing pathway A, the clinics? Well, first of all, because with clinics, you will have the opportunity to not only satisfy the EL requirement, you have the opportunity to excel at it. There are so many wonderful ways to answer this why clinic question. There's as many ways to answer it as there are clinical teachers at Stanford. But we can distill those benefits into 4 broad categories. And so now we'll go to that next slide. First of all, clinic opens a window into the real world of lawyers and their clients. What begins for you as fundamental theory in doctrinal classes evolves into essential tools that will allow you to protect the interests of actual clients. You'll spend hours, hopefully fruitful hours, working with people and organizations that the clinic that you're in will serve. You'll interact with key stakeholders like administrative bodies, boards of directors, judges, and commissioners. And through all of that, you will gradually begin to develop your own well-informed sense of the type of lawyer that you aim to be. Not merely based on subject matter, but based on values and ethics and a discovery of personally meaningful work. Let's go to the next slide. Central to that formation of a sense of professional identity is the close mentoring and supervision that you'll receive from your clinic teachers. You will enjoy a remarkably small teacher-to-student ratio, typically 4-to-1 or better across the clinics, with directors and lecturers deployed across all of our clinics. Working with you daily throughout the quarter, we teachers get to know you and your work quite well. And that knowledge means that we can speak authentically about you to potential judges and other employers. And you know, I got to tell you, those mentorship bonds, they last. Every teacher here can tell you about the close contacts that they've maintained with former students that go back years and years. You can go to the next slide. Really, the benefits of that close connection extend, of course, well beyond the faculty-student contacts. Your quarter will feature close collaboration with your clinic mates, as Professor Srikantiah mentioned. You will grapple together with hard questions that make the law a dynamic practice rather than a staid, static profession. Because most of us are all in one firm, your collaboration will actually cross clinic boundaries. That will afford you the opportunity to make interesting linkages over doctrinal divides. And the so-called soft skill, but essential skill, of being able to work effectively and harmoniously in teams will provide you with dividends for years to come. Let's go to the next slide. Finally, a broad fourth category of why clinic is because it's fun. You'll become part of a fun community. When I reach out to SLS alums, I am continually amazed at how many of them have maintained the friend groups that they formed in clinic. And I think that happens because these are friendships that are formed or are deepened in this intense crucible of a quarter that's dedicated to clients and projects that make a difference. Let's go to the next slide. When you think about which clinics to apply to, we encourage you to broaden your mind. You can go to the next slide. We want you to think beyond subject matter. Rather than focusing only on the subject matter of a specific clinic, think in terms of, for example, the skills that you might want to develop. Maybe deeply analytical writing is what you're after. Well, those experiences are available across a broad array of clinics. Think about what client base you might want to be exposed to. There are several different clinics that actually serve common client communities. Think about the pace of work you want. Some clinics offer a measured and deliberate experience. Others are more rapid. Whatever the choice, since you are encouraged to apply broadly, please recognize that there are valuable experiences that await you regardless of the clinic choice that you're matched with. I'm passing it to Phil Malone, Professor Phil Malone.
Great. Well, thank you, Ron, and thank all of you for being here. We're really glad to have a chance to talk to you about the clinics. I wish I were in the Caribbean, or at least virtually in the Caribbean, but I'm not, so I'm pretending to be on campus at Stanford Law School. So I want to talk to you really briefly about our clinics and make some introductions. As you can see, there's a list of all of our clinics up on the screen now. And as you probably know, we have 10 different clinics within the Mills Legal Clinic. I'm just going to mention each one very briefly, give you a super quick sense of what that clinic does, and then introduce you to the clinic director and have the director introduce herself or himself, and then introduce the rest of their team. If you want to know more about the clinics, obviously there's tons of information on the MLC website, individual clinic websites, and you'll hear in a few minutes about some lunches that we'll be having over the next couple of weeks where you can learn a whole lot more. But let's do a quick introduction now. So the first clinic I want to tell you about is the Youth and Education Law Clinic, affectionately known as YELP. And they work with disadvantaged youth in their communities to ensure that everyone has equal access to educational opportunities. YELP is directed by Professor Bill Koski. Bill?
Hey, good afternoon, folks. I'm Bill Koski, and I'm the director of the Youth and Education Law Project, also known as YELP, as Professor Malone said. And I think here with me today is our legal assistant, Joanne Newman. You want to say hi, Joanne?
Howdy, everybody. I'm Joanne. Nice to meet you.
And our clinical supervising attorney, I think, is also on, although I can't see her, Tara Ford.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tara.
Great. Thank you, YELP folks. Next clinic I want to mention is our Supreme Court Litigation Clinic. If we could have the next slide. The Supreme Court Litigation Clinic, as it sounds, represents individuals and nonprofits in both criminal and civil actions before the highest court in the land. The Supreme Court Clinic is directed by Jeff Fisher and Pam Carlin. Jeff, you want to start us off?
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to have so many people interested in clinics, and hope to see all of you next year. Pam Carlin, my co-director, is tied up with something else, so I'll say hello on behalf of her. And I'll also introduce the third instructor in the clinic, Brian Fletcher, and hopefully Brian can say hello too.
Hi everyone, nice to see all of you.
Great, thank you. Next slide, our next clinic I want to tell you about is the Religious Liberty Clinic. And students in that clinic represent a diverse group of clients on legal matters that really range across a wide set of different beliefs and practices. And the Religious Liberty Clinic is directed by Jim Sani.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. Look forward to you joining us next year. With me on the line is our clinical supervising attorney, Zeba Huck.
Hi, guys. Looking forward to seeing you next year.
Great, thank you. Next clinic is the Organizations and Transactions Clinic, affectionately known as ONT. And students there get to advise corporate nonprofit clients on issues such as governance, contracts, structural, and programmatic matters. And ONT is directed by Jay Mitchell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jay. I direct ONT. On the call today is our clinical supervising attorney, Michelle Sanu.
Hi, everyone. Good to meet you.
And our legal assistant, Ruby Gonzalez.
Hi, everybody.
Great. Thank you all. Next up is, we can have the next slide, is my clinic, the Jules Guard Intellectual Property and Innovation Clinic, affectionately known as JIPIC. And in JIPIC, we advocate on behalf of innovators, and we try to shape intellectual property and technology laws to best promote innovation, creativity, and generativity. I don't have a CSA, another instructor, but I think our legal assistant, Anna Villanueva, is on. Anna, are you there? Okay, perhaps not. Let's go on to the next clinic, if we could have the next slide. Next up is the Immigrants' Rights Clinic. Students there get to defend immigrants' rights in San Francisco Immigration Court, in Federal District Court, and in the Federal Courts of Appeals. And that clinic is directed by Professor Srikantiah, who you've already heard from, but she'll introduce herself and her team.
Hi, everyone, again. It's so nice to see you again. And let me introduce my wonderful team. The person who teaches the clinic with me is clinical supervising attorney Lisa Weissman-Ward. Lisa?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Looking forward to meeting as many of you as possible in the future weeks and months to come.
Wonderful. And also working as an attorney in the clinic is clinical fellow Shanti Tarayil. Shanti?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you.
And our legal assistant is Erica Madriz. Erica?
Hi, everyone. Good to see you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Phil.
Great. Thank you all. Next clinic I want to tell you about is our environmental law clinic. Students there get to represent national, regional, and grassroots nonprofits on a whole range of environmental and energy issues in state and federal court and before administrative agencies. And the Environmental Clinic, or ELC as we call it, is directed by Debbie Sivas.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Phil. Good to see you all. And I want to introduce our staff. So we have a couple of CSAs on the phone. So, on the line, Matt Sanders.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Can't wait to work with many of you next year.
Alicia Thiesing.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
And Molly Melius.
Hi, everybody.
So we have a big team. And then I don't know if, so we share with Phil a legal assistant, Anna, who just got done filing a brief for us. So I don't know if she's made it on the Zoom or not.
I'm here now. Hi, everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Next up is our criminal prosecution clinic. Students in the criminal prosecution clinic get to shape the outcome of felony and misdemeanor prosecutions in superior court, and they learn how to wield the power of the state ethically and deliberately. The prosecution clinic is directed by Professor George Fisher.
Hi there, everyone. This is George Fisher. It's nice to join you. I'm here by phone, so you probably can't see me.
Right. We can see your name. Very impressive. Thanks, George. Next up on the flip side is the Criminal Defense Clinic, which represents indigent individuals accused of crimes on a wide range of misdemeanor offenses, including drug use and possession, assault, and theft. And the Criminal Defense Clinic is directed by Professor Ron Tyler, who you saw a minute ago. But Ron, welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I'm going to yield my time to my co-teacher, lecturer and clinical supervising attorney, Suzanne Luban, who is, I'm sure, present. Suzanne.
Hello there. Good to see you all and hope to speak with you about our clinic really soon.
And then also I will introduce at this time our legal assistant, Erica Farmer. Erica?
Hello, nice to meet everybody.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, we have our community law clinic, which represents low-income clients in housing, Social Security disability, and criminal record expungement matters. And as was said earlier, they have an off-campus office near East Palo Alto. And that clinic is directed by Juliet Brody. And I'll have Juliet do introductions. And then since you'll have the floor, Juliet, why don't you just keep it and talk to us about how to apply to clinics.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. Yes, hi, everybody. I'm Juliet Brody, direct the Community Law Clinic, and you can see my virtual background is that photo again of students hard at work out there in our community office. Let me introduce the two other lawyers in our office. First, Danielle Jones, and then she will in turn turn it over to Lisa Douglas. Danielle?
Hi, folks. Peace be to all of you in this bizarre time we're living. I'm appointed to my colleague, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Look forward to meeting you at our lunch talk next week and answering any questions you have. Welcome.
Thanks, folks. So as Phil said, that's the end of the one slide per clinic, the 10 of us that will be operating next year. And now it's on me to run through the next couple slides to talk to you about how to become a part of all this. The system is relatively simple, but we think it's useful for you to have an overview here. I'm going to tell you what the steps are and then what the timeline is. And we'll just get started. So how to apply. Ruby, can we have the next slide? So the first thing to be aware of when you think about applying to next year's clinics is to know which clinics are offered in which quarter next year. That's because we do a single omnibus, comprehensive, one-time application and registration process for all quarters of the upcoming year at a single time, which is what we're preparing for now that will happen later this spring and into the summer. So whether you're interested in doing clinic in fall, winter, or spring, or interested in many of the above, you apply for them all now, and you have the chance to rank, as I'll explain, what your order of preference is as to the clinics and to the quarters. But you have to think about the whole academic year at once, which we know is challenging. The reason that we do it that way is because we are running real cases in a real law firm, and we need to know our capacity and who's going to be where far in advance. We can't let it float and do this 3 times a year. We need to lay it all out so that we can plan for our caseloads going forward. So this is the slide you want to start with. We call this the clinic grid, and it will also be up on the website so you can return to it. But you want to be thinking about what clinics am I interested in, using that broad thinking that Professor Tyler explained, and also given opportunity costs, what quarter makes the best sense for me. And most students choose to apply to a wide range of diverse clinics and also diverse quarters, knowing that as the chips fall, it will of course have consequences for what other courses you take. So you have to plan in advance, and you want to start here by looking at the clinic grid. You'll see on the clinic grid that this quarter, next year, our current planning is that only 2 of the clinics are going to be operating in the fall. That is in part because those are clinics that have proven themselves quite amenable to an online modality. We, as Professor Srikantiah said at the top, we are running all of the clinics next year. The ones that are running online this quarter are going great. But we're also, all of us are waiting eagerly for when we can be IRL again. And most of us are going to be teaching full-time in the winter and the spring. You will notice that we are not able to offer the International Human Rights Clinic next year. That's regrettable. It's a very important, obviously a very important body of law and subject of practice, but we do not have a faculty director for that clinic right now, and due to the pandemic, our ability to fill that position has been interrupted. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to run that clinic next year. We know there are students who are very interested in studying and practicing in the international human rights space, and we'd be happy to talk about other opportunities. Happily, our dean is an expert in that area, and you know that she is prioritizing making work in that area available to students. But that is the clinic grid for next year. Let's look at the next slide, please. So as I said, we do a single consolidated application process for the entire academic year, and it all operates through an online portal. The next slide shows you what the home page looks like. A link to this home page is going to be, to this portal, will be embedded on our website starting Friday, May 22nd at 5 p.m. But this is what will go live at that time. This is what you will be looking at. You'll see at the top right corner, I don't know if you can see on the slide, but the first step is to log in and create a profile, which I'll go over in a moment. But we have slated this to go live on Friday, May 22nd, because that is when our series of 10 lunch Zoom sessions will conclude. We really want you to hear from as many of the individual clinic teams as you wish before you even open the portal. So it will go live on that day at 5 p.m. And now the next slide, I'll show you an overview of what the steps are that that portal will walk you through. As I said, the first step is to log in and create a profile. It's very simple. It's all SUNET ID based. It is linked to certain things in the registrar's office, so it will auto-populate, I think. We're working on the coding in the back. Your student ID number, etc. But then there are basically 3 substantive steps that the system will walk you through. You are asked first to upload the documents that are required. So it'll give you an opportunity to review which clinics require what type of documents. It's quite simple. We all want to see a resume because we want to get a sense of what work you've done in the past. And some of the clinics also ask that you upload a writing sample and a transcript. So you have to look first at the sort of overview page, which will tell you you have to know which clinics you intend to apply to and note what documents they require, and then upload those to this first sort of spot on the website. You then go to the next step, which is where you actually apply to the clinics. And again, because you've thought in advance, you know, I'm going to apply to 6 of these 10 clinics. They all sound great. I'm going to apply to 6 of them. And you're going to go individually through those 6 and fill out the clinic application. Now, don't be scared by this. This is not a law school's, long application. This is basically, for many of the clinics, it's a simple question. What have you done in the past that you think makes you interested in this? Why do you want to do this clinic? Just an opportunity for you to say a little bit about why you want to do the environmental law clinic or the religious liberty clinic. And please don't feel that it has to be, I've spent my whole career, my whole life preparing to be an environmental lawyer. All of us are trying to put together diverse teams of experts, people who know a lot about the subject area with people who don't. We're just trying to get to know you a little bit. So these clinic applications are quite simple. Please don't overthink this and worry about it too much. Once you have filled out the application to each clinic, you then select for each clinic the quarter of it that you wish to apply to. So this is sounding complicated, but it's not. It's a click of boxes. You'll look at, again, a grid, and for each X on that clinic grid document, you have a chance to check the box and say, yes, I want to apply to Supreme Court Clinic in the fall, and Religious Liberty Clinic in the spring, and Criminal Defense Clinic in the spring, and you click all of the boxes for all the clinic quarters that you're interested in. that is the complicated third step. Sounds complicated. And then the fourth and final step is to, of those X's, now you rank them. And you have the chance to tell us of all the 6 clinics, and it may be 11 quarters that you have selected as being interested in. You now rank them 1 to 11. My first choice is environmental law in the winter. My second choice is environmental law in the spring. And I'm saying that because in my view, Debbie Sivas is at the top of my screen. So hi, Debbie. So you rank 1 through 11 all of your choices, and the system will prompt you, hey, you didn't rank, you applied to one, but you haven't ranked it, you're not done. Sort of this application is incomplete. So you'll get a prompt that you have to rank every clinic that you have applied to. And then you're done. So you create a profile, you upload the documents, you have the grid in front of you or open on another window so you see what your plan is, what your priorities are, keeping in mind the other courses you're interested in, and then you rank all the quarters that you have applied to. So that's how it's done. Okay, let's go to the next slide. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is, I promise. Okay, so the portal will open to you, as I said, on May 22nd when the lunch events are complete. Now, you're probably thinking, what's the deadline? Because you're good, compliant, you like to meet deadlines, and you will continue to do so. And that's what every lawyer wants to know. What's the deadline? Usually we're able to give you a deadline, but this year we do not know the deadline yet, and that's in your interest. That's because we're trying to thread this needle and make it as late as possible so we can have as good information as possible about what our educational conditions are going to be in the fall, right? We're all waiting to hear what's going to happen. We're hoping that we will get information and that you will have information about what's happening in the fall with respect to online learning before we close the portal for you, before the deadline. At the same time, we need to leave ourselves enough time on the other side to review the applications and get this all wrapped up in time for pre-registration and enrollment at the university system. So we're threading that needle. I'm happy to say it's going to have a nice big eye, that needle. We'll get it. We just don't know when it's going to be yet, but it will be likely in the mid to end of June. Our promise to you is that you will get plenty of notice. Please do not worry that we're going to send you an email on a Wednesday that says deadline for clinic applications is this Friday at 5. No, we know that you're going to have to think about this and it's going to take you some time, so that even if you don't give it another thought now, we will give you at least 2 weeks notice of when that deadline, when the door is going to shut for you. Because when the deadline happens, then the portal closes to students and you can't mess around with your applications or your rankings anymore. It's done and it is literally closed off to you. But we will give you plenty of notice for that. Then the portal turns over to the clinical instructors, the faculty, and the clinical supervising attorneys. And we go about the process of reviewing the applications and making our own selections. And the way that it works is each of us sees all the applications of all the students who have applied to our clinic. We see them by quarter. So, for example, next year, my clinic is running full-time in the winter and the spring. If a student has applied to both the winter and the spring, I will see that student's application on both of my lists. The crucial point for you to know is that when we see those lists, we do not see or know where you have ranked our clinic. So you don't need to worry about signaling how much you love and want our clinic, thinking that that will be a factor in whom we might select and put into our clinic. We just don't know. It is blind to us with respect to ranking, so don't worry about that signaling. We must take every single one of the students who has applied to every clinic. We then put in rank order for enrollment. without knowing where we have been ranked. So we have no idea what's going to happen. It's very suspenseful. Then we have a deadline, and then there's a magic moment when the system matches the applicants to the clinic. So what it does, and it's an algorithm, and Professor Malone can say more about how it works and how you code this, but it basically matches every student to the clinic of the student's highest ranking to which she was admitted. It's like the medical school residency match program, and it's kind of built on that model where the system knows you were admitted here, and you see what I'm saying? The ranking, it results in a match with any tie going to the student. So you get it matched to the clinic of your higher ranking on which you were high enough on the list to match. We will notify you by email. The system will send out an email. Again, we don't know exactly when, but toward the end of the summer, giving you the match, the clinic to which you have been matched. Now, I want to take a pause and say something very important about the match process. Because of how the match works and what lies on the other side, it is very important to understand that clinic enrollment and matching is binding. So once you get that email, congratulations, you've been admitted to the Environmental Law Clinic in the spring of 2021. You are bound to enroll in it. This goes back to how we are planning, and our clients need to know we've got a full-on team and who's in, how that's going to look. So it is matching. It is binding. What this means is when you are looking at that grid and you are in step 3 and step 4 of doing your rankings, you have to understand that you do not apply and rank any clinic that you will not feel okay about matching to. This needs to be true even, we all know that the COVID pandemic has a lot of uncertainty, but we cannot, we have to have the binding nature of the match nevertheless go forward because it's the only way the system overall works. So please be mindful of that when you apply. Because when you get that, you'll be reminded that this is binding. Are there exceptions? Yes. Medical emergencies. People have been permitted to withdraw from the clinic, but it is only on truly unforeseen medical or other kind of emergency circumstances. So back to this slide, after you get that notification, just to remind you, you will get that notification before you need to do other bureaucratic paperwork that we know the system demands of you. That experiential learning form that Professor Srikantiah mentioned, and also pre-registration for the law school. That's the needle that we're threading because we know there are opportunity costs and you can't enroll for classes until you know, oh, winter I'm going to be in JIPIC, so I'm not going to take any classes and go forward with your pre-reg on that basis. You also will receive over the summer paperwork from your clinic staff to get you certified with the California State Bar that will enable you to be a certified law clinic and practice law in the clinic under supervision. Okay, that's that. Next slide, please. We just want to go through, in light of all of this, how many clinics should I apply to? How does this actually work? If you apply to only one clinic, what are my chances of getting in? Very slim. Most of the clinics are over enrolled. We have an abundance, an embarrassment of riches, but it's very unlikely that if you just say, I want to do RLC in the winter, that's like I'm putting all my eggs in that basket. Again, Professor Sani's not going to know that all of your eggs are in his basket, and you may not get in. So that is a very risky strategy. If you know you want to do clinic next year, the second question, how many clinics do I need to apply to if I want to ensure a match? We actually can't say because this is a math problem, right? With independent variables that we don't know yet. But our experience, our historic experience is if you apply to 5 clinics, that is 5 clinics, not 5 quarters, right? 5 distinct clinics, you will match. I don't think, as someone who has presided over this data for a few years, I don't think anyone has ever applied to 5 clinics and been shut out. 4, yes. 3, definitely. If you apply to only 3 clinics, we cannot guarantee, and we can't actually guarantee even with 5, because it depends on how the numbers break. But 5, historically, you'd be in good shape. Then the final question, what if I don't want to do clinic next year, assuming I'm talking to mostly first-year students? What if, can I wait to apply until my 3L year if I want to do a clinic, but for whatever reason, I don't want to do it till my 3L year? Can I be guaranteed a clinic to satisfy my experiential learning requirement? And the answer to that is yes. We will accommodate rising 3Ls who need a clinic to satisfy experiential learning, but only if they tell us now, if you so signal on that EL form that you're going to be asked to complete over the summer. And at that point, you will be actually required to apply to 5, not a recommendation, but a requirement, because we can't have, obviously, someone holding back until the 3L year, applying to a single clinic on the theory that, well, they have to let me in because I need it for my EL credit. You can't game the system that way. If you're going to wait till your 3L year, your pledge is to apply broadly to ensure that you will match. I think that may be my last slide. What is the next slide, Ruby? So the takeaways. So I had to talk for a lot of minutes about this because it's hard to describe, like an online portal verbally, but it's actually quite easy. Please don't stress about this. This is not like a write-on exercise for law review. This is like a Q&A, like a couple quick questions. Tell us about yourself and why you're interested in the clinic. Think broadly. Again, appreciate the window to apply. We know when it opens. We don't yet know when it closes, but you'll have plenty of notice of that. And remember that the match is binding. That's how to apply to clinic. So I think I send it back to Jayashri for final thoughts. Is that right?
I think that's right. So Ruby, if you could go to the next slide. So we invite you to get to know us better. We're going to be having daily lunchtime clinic by clinic information sessions. And the place to go to learn more about these sessions, which are on the screen right now, is the MLC website. So if you go to our website, you can actually just click into the Zoom session, the lunch session for each of these. And you can have your questions answered about each clinic on that clinic website. Now, what other places can you go to get more information? Well, there is other information also on the website. One of the things that we have is a really nice grid that tells you which clinic offers which skills and which experience. That's available on the website, and there's other information clinic by clinic about each clinic and the contact information for the clinic directors and clinical supervising attorneys. So you can get a lot of information on our website. We invite you to these lunches that are going to be happening every day. And we want to note that you can go to all the lunches. You are invited to go to every single one. Just click on the Zoom link and join us because we're always thrilled to tell you everything that we can about the clinical opportunity. And of course, if we were in a physical space where we could see you all the time, we'd encourage you to come to our offices, but we are just as available, all of us, on Zoom, on phone. And so please do get in touch with us if you have questions about individual clinics. We're just delighted, especially now when we don't get to see students as much as we would like. We are especially happy to see you on Zoom and to talk to you by phone. So please get in touch if you have questions. Ruby, the next slide, please. So speaking of questions, if you have questions, we have a little bit of time right now to answer them. So what I would encourage you to do is either raise your hand or send a message on chat, and we can that way know that you're asking a question. So I see a raised hand from Natalie Moyce. Natalie?
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering, before we have to make our elections, will we know what the class grid will look like next year before we have to do that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. That's part of the whole way this is structured, is that you have the class grid before you make the elections. That's part of the way this timing is working. So that's precisely right. You'll have the class grid, and then you'll know that when you decide which clinics to rank which quarters. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. Thanks for asking it. Any other questions? Raise your hand or type it into the chat box to one of the hosts.
This is Juliet. I'm one of the hosts and I'm not seeing written questions. I don't know if something's gone awry with the settings. So let me encourage people, if 10 people start speaking all at once, we'll manage it, but please just feel free to just grab the mic and start talking.
Yes, and actually someone just sent a question in, Juliet. I'm gonna have, so I don't do so much talking, I'm gonna have you answer this question, which is, are clinic applications blind?
No, clinic applications are not blind. We want to get to know you. We want to see your resume. We want to hear what animates you and makes you excited about the various clinics' work. So no, they are not blind. I see a question from Rachel. Will there be an influx of 3Ls whose clinics were canceled affecting clinic admissions? So the answer to that is, I'm going to fight the hypo a little bit and fight back on the word influx. There is a number of students whose clinics were canceled in the spring because of COVID. As you likely know, the Criminal Defense Clinic and YELP, the Youth and Education Law Project, were slated to go forward this spring quarter, but because their clinics are so client heavy and in-person heavy and going to jails and schools, etc., given the timing and the lead time, the lack of it, it was decided not to go forward with those clinics, and those students are going to be accommodated, and so that will, yes, that will affect the capacity in those two clinics next year. And we appreciate that that could have a rolling effect that we're just going to have to watch and manage. It's uncharted territory for us. So I'm only fighting back. There aren't a whole lot of them. There are, I think, a total of 18 such students, and we're accounting for that in our planning.
And so I have a question from Michaela Pyatt. For students who went straight through to law school and don't have work experience, how does that affect clinic applications? So thank you for raising that. You know, one of the things that all of us look for is a diversity of students and diversity of life experiences in our clinics. So students who went straight through but are really interested in a particular subject area or who are interested in getting exposure, that's what part of what makes the clinic fun is to have students who have different life experiences. And so we encourage you to share in your application what makes you interested in clinics, in a particular clinic. But absolutely many students have gone straight through and have a fantastic clinical experience and end up being some of our superstars in the clinic, and precisely in some ways because I think the clinic turns on a growth mindset, this idea of learning and growing and changing and evolving. And if you can embrace that, that's the key to success. I'm getting a whole bunch of questions, so I'm gonna read a couple of them. And I know, Ruby, you're getting a few questions as well. Let me read the ones I have, Ruby, and then you can read the ones you have. One is, do we make available the acceptance rates for each clinic? And the answer is no, we don't make those available. They vary every year and they vary for different reasons. So it's not really a indicator of anything. So that's part of the reason we don't do that. For the next question, for 1L applicants, should our resumes include information about summer internships and leadership positions? Absolutely. That's always helpful to know what you're interested in and what your focus is going to be during the time that you're in the clinic. So you do have the opportunity to share that. Another question about the International Human Rights Clinic. Unfortunately, as Professor Brody mentioned, that is not going to be offered next academic year because because of the COVID pandemic, our search for a new director in that clinic was paused. And so we're just unable to offer that clinic next year. Writing sample. Someone said, is a writing sample a LRW or Fed Lip brief? So actually most clinic applications do not require a writing sample. It's just what I think Professor Brody was referring to was a statement. We asked for a short statement saying, you know, what do you hope to get out of clinic? It's usually kind of one page-ish, a paragraph to a page. I believe the Supreme Court clinic might require a writing sample. Professor Brody, is that right?
I think that's right. Jeff? Jeff Fisher, are you still on the call? Is that correct?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, we do like to look at a writing sample as part of our review. And I think that might be true of environmental, but I could be wrong about that as well. But no magic in there. Just send along either whether it's LRW, that's fine, or if you have something else that you like, that's fine too. Thanks.
And Jeff, stay on because there's another question that's relevant to you. There's a question that's somebody asked, Rico Altman Marino, about will 1L grades be given different weight given the lack of graded work in the winter and spring? And I'll tell you, most of the clinics don't look at grades. So the Immigrant Rights Clinic, Community Law Clinic, Religious Liberty, we don't look at grades. The only, I believe that the Supreme Court Litigation Clinic does. So maybe Jeff, you can answer that question about how you're going to handle that.
We as again, part of our overall process, we like to see your transcript in terms of what you've taken and also the grades are on it too. I wouldn't worry at all about the pass-fail mode that we're all in right now. That won't be important to us one way or the other.
Okay, great. And Juliet, you have a question, and I realize Ruby has a list of questions, so maybe you'll do yours, Juliet, and then go to Ruby.
Yeah, I just have two. Well, one is a comment that Professor Malone reminded me about the Yelp and Crim Defense. I did not mean to suggest that those clinics will have no openings next year because they'll be accommodating this year's canceled students. So there still will be opportunities in those clinics. There will be fewer, to be honest, but it's not that those clinics will not be available to a new crop of students. So I wanted to clarify that answer. And then I wanted to answer Natalie's question, does it affect the chance of getting into a clinic that we want if we wait until the end of the election period to submit our applications? That's a great question. It absolutely does not, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. The portal is uniquely open to students. We don't have any access to the applications until the entire process is done. The door slams shut for students and opens up for instructors. So we do not review them on an ongoing or a rolling basis. We see them all on an equal footing, again, without knowing your rankings or when you submitted them when the portal opens to us. And that's the only question I'm seeing. So Ruby, are you?
No, I have another couple questions about the Human Rights Clinic. So let me answer those and then I will promise to turn it over to Ruby, as I've been saying I will. So for the Human Rights Clinic, I misread the question. The question was, is it going to be offered the next academic year? As in not this coming year, but the following year? Can we confirm that it definitely will be? Unfortunately, we're in this weird world of post-COVID of not knowing where the university's headed. When are we going to unpause faculty hiring? It's just really unknown. And so I wish I could give a promise that it would be, we're definitely running it in the following academic year, but that I can't promise that right now. I can tell you that we recognize how important that clinic is, and we're going to make every effort to hire in it as soon as we possibly can, but I don't know about the timing. The other thing I will say is that there are other international human rights opportunities available to students in two ways. One is students who are interested in human rights work. Some of that work is done in the existing clinics that are being offered. Like, so for example, the Supreme Court Litigation Clinic might do a human rights issue, the Environmental Clinic or the Immigrant Rights Clinic. Many of our clinics have an make those connections for you. Ruby?
Okay, I just unmuted. So a student named Diane asked, will there be enough spots in a clinic next year for everyone who wants one, since many 2Ls this year were unable to do their clinic in the spring and now have a guaranteed spot in the clinic next year?
So Juliet, I'm going to ask you as our resident statistics guru to answer that question.
That is a terrifying characterization because that way overstates it. But the answer is, we can't really know, right? Because it's based on we don't know how many people in the class of 20, what are you first years? This is 2020, the class of 2022. We don't know if 100% of you apply. That's really different than if 70% of you apply. So we can't really know as a statistical matter because we don't control the inputs. That said, as I said when explaining the historical process, I can say it is true that some students have been shut out of clinics, meaning we use that phrase to mean they applied, but they did not match because they were not high enough on any professor's list to match before that clinic was full of the clinics that they applied to. That only happens historically to students who apply narrowly. If you apply to 5, you will, I can't say you will certainly match, but I will say in every year in the past you would have matched. And we think that the overflow into of the students whose clinics was canceled, we think it's going to move that needle a little bit, but we don't know, we don't think that much. We're really hoping that it's not going to drive up the number of shutouts too much. And we will let you know that when we finalize that grid. I wish I had a rock solid answer for you, but again, we don't control the inputs.
Ruby, are there any other questions that you have? I think we probably have time for one last one.
Yep. So the last one I have here is a question from a student named Benjamin. If we're also considering an externship, do you know how deadlines might line up?
Well, so that's a good question. I think one of the things that that it's hard to predict is how the deadlines for the externships match, because each externship deadline, turns on which nonprofit and you're applying to. And I think that Mike Wynn and the Levin Center are still figuring out what the externship world looks like next year. So what I'm going to ask you to do is maybe ask Mike that question and circle back, and we can certainly post further answers on our website to that. But it's right now, I think he's still figuring out what the landscape is for externships, given the whole COVID pandemic and lack of clarity on what's being offered. I'm sorry, I can't be more clear, but whatever information we have, we will definitely share with you. So I'm guessing there might be additional questions. Please bring them to us. You can email me, you can email any of my colleagues, and come to these sessions, ask your questions. We're happy to share what we know. We know that this is a particularly uncertain time because of the pandemic and being remote, and we want to make sure we're sharing every bit of information that we have. So please do ask your questions and stay in touch. I'm going to conclude today's session, though, because we want to make sure that we end on time and leave you time to go to your next class and other work. Thank you for joining us. And I want to end by thanking Professor Brody, Professor Tyler, Professor Malone, and Ruby and Michelle Morris for all of their help pulling together today's session. It was a team effort, and it was just really phenomenal. So thank you so much, and we're adjourned for today. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.